The year is 1350 and a lone trader pauses before the massive oak gates of the city of Cologne. He turns for one final glance at the protection of stone ramparts and the smoking hearths of civilization. Ahead stretches the road, a brown strip of mud fading into the dark, choking grasp of the ancient forest. In the Middle Ages, travel is not a pastime, but a perilous duty attempted only by those without alternatives. There are no vacations and no scenic paths, only a harsh struggle against landscape and weather. The Roman roads, once straight paved arteries of an empire, have crumbled into fractured ribs of stone, devoured by creeping growth. The forest of this age is nothing like the managed woodlands of the 21st century. It is a Urwald, a primeval wilderness that blankets huge regions of Europe like a black and impenetrable sea. The trees are towering, their crowns so thick that they shut out the sun and cast a permanent dusk across the ground below. To leave the worn track is a death sentence, for there are no charts and no markers to show the way. A traveler who loses view of the road may circle for days until fatigue or cold exposure takes them. The forest is a maze without barriers, a realm where direction dissolves and silence hums in the ears. Yet the silence deceives, because the woods crawl with predators that see a solitary human as simple prey. Wolves move in packs far larger and fiercer than those in modern Europe. The wild boar, a creature of power and fury, armed with blade-like tusks, can rip open a horse with one charge. But the beasts are not the most frightening dwellers of the deep woods, for that honor belongs to man himself. The forest is the territory of the outlaw, the exiled, and the criminal cast away from society. Under medieval law, a man named an outlaw is vogelfrei, meaning he holds the legal rank of a bird or a wolf. He may be slain by anyone without punishment, which makes him desperate and extremely dangerous to any traveler he meets. These men have nothing to risk, and they gather in bands of brigands that hunt merchants and pilgrims. They prepare ambushes at narrow passes, cutting trees across the road to halt carts and coaches. Even the nobility cannot be trusted as ruined knights turn to highway theft to support their status. These robber barons rule from small cliff-top castles, riding down to demand tolls from anyone crossing their lands. They do not view themselves as criminals, but as lords claiming their right to tax the road, often at sword point. The merchant carrying costly goods must employ armed escorts, which reduces his earnings and gives no promise of safety. Mercenaries are famously unreliable and may change sides if bandits promise a bigger share of plunder. Betrayal walks beside every journey, and a careful traveler trusts no one beyond the city walls. Beyond bodily dangers, there exists a deep mental dread that seizes the medieval mind when entering the trees. The forest is seen as the realm of the supernatural, a pagan sphere resisting church order. Peasants believe demons, witches, and restless spirits hide in the hollows of ancient oaks. Each groaning branch and every shadow becomes a signal of evil forces watching from the gloom. To travel alone is to invite the devil's notice, believed to ambush the faithful in the wild. This fear runs so deep that people sing hymns aloud or carry relics to build a sacred shield around themselves. Music, when darkness arrives, the peril doubles and the traveler must secure shelter or face near certain death. Sleeping outdoors is an act of last resort, so one must reach a roadside inn before sunset fades. These inns are seldom comfortable, but filthy hovels where guests lie on straw crawling with lice. The innkeeper himself may work with bandits, alerting them when a rich guest leaves at dawn. Food is limited and often spoiled, and the ale is diluted or sour. Trust is worth more than gold, and one rests with a dagger under the pillow and one eye awake. Privacy does not exist as strangers must share beds to preserve warmth. One might wake beside a coughing pilgrim, a drunken soldier, or a thief testing loose purses. The odor of unwashed bodies, smoke, and animals fills the hall, creating a choking air. Movement is painfully slow with a loaded ox cart covering perhaps 10 to 15 kilometers on a good day. When rain falls, the dirt tracks become swamps of mud that can swallow a wheel to the axle. A shattered wheel deep in the forest is a disaster that leaves the traveler stuck and exposed. There are no mechanics to summon, so the traveler must repair the cart himself or forsake the cargo. Winter makes journeys nearly impossible as roads harden into frozen ruts that can break wooden axles. Snowdrifts may hide the route entirely, leading the careless into ravines or iced marshes. Bridges are another threat, often built of decaying timber and maintained by no one. Many river crossings depend on ferries where the ferrymen can demand outrageous fees from desperate travelers. If one refuses payment, the only option is to swim freezing currents, a task few medieval people can manage. Communication ends the instant one enters the forest, turning disappearance into a silent event. A merchant who never reaches his destination is simply gone. His fate a mystery never uncovered. There are no search parties, for the forest is too wide and too perilous to scan for one missing life. The only rule is the rule of strength, and mercy is forgotten in the wild. A scream in the forest is swallowed by moss and wind, heard only by crows. The king's peace stops at the city gate. Beyond that boundary, chaos rules completely. This is why the sight of a city wall or castle tower brings such deep relief to the medieval wayfarer. It stands for order, law, and the defense of stone against untamed nature. The city is a lamp of light in a sea of darkness. A fortress of humanity against the advancing wild. To pass through the medieval forest is to stare into the abyss of a world hostile to human life. It is a trial of endurance, faith, and fortune that breaks the weak and hardened survivors. Today we see the forest as a place of leisure. But our ancestors viewed it with primal dread. They knew the trees were not friends, but silent witnesses to countless unrecorded tragedies. The romance of the open road is a modern idea born from safe highways and patrols. For the medieval man, the road was a battlefield and the forest the foe. The decision to travel was never casual, for it meant placing one's life in fate's hands. Each arrival was a small miracle marked with prayers of thanks in the nearest cathedral. And so the merchant enters the gates of the next city, brushing mud from his boots and fear from his heart. He has survived the green hell for one more day. But he knows the forest is always waiting. It waits beyond the walls, patient and hungry, ready to claim the next soul who dares enter. This is the reality of travel in the Middle Ages.